ostensibly streaming right now. Waiting for some folks to line up for ThursdAGE with Owen KC Stephens. Hi, Owen.
Hey, Troy. How you doing?
I'm doing good. We're not really starting yet. We're just waiting to see all the people. Looks like we are connected. So we'll just sort of sing a song and talk about our hopes and our dreams.
We appear to be live, but what I see is get in the adventure hole.
Oh, yeah. Good. Good. We just need to see our friends logging in and coming in and hanging out. It's unusual to... here we go. Charlotte, can you hear me? Charlotte's chanting ThursdAGE, ThursdAGE, ThursdAGE. What's interesting is that I see Charlotte, but I see no eyeballs in the chat. So, I don't know what that means, but I just want to make sure. Oh, looks like Jason Waltman's here. Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to you, Owen KC Stephens, says Jason. Jason, can you hear us?
He hears Troy, which I presume means he'll hear me if I say something.
In a perfect world. Charlotte says no sound whatsoever.
Yeah.
So how can it be that one person can and the other cannot? Jason, do you hear Owen as well? Owen, say hi.
Hi, Jason. Hi, Nicole. Nicole says she can barely hear you.
Wild.
And I am a bit louder, but not much.
Okay. Well, let's fix that and see.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about dice while Troy is trying to figure things out, and Troy can interrupt me at any time. On Twitter today, Green Ronin responded to some questions about dice mythology, and I responded to the internal inquiry about dice mythology. And I am, generally speaking, a very rational person. I do my best to avoid things like mythology and such. Oh, Charlotte says she wasn't serious. She can hear everyone, and you're all clear.
I saw that. Well, great deal. Well, how about we do this? Let's just go like this. Hey, look at that. Hi, Owen. Good to see your face.
Thank you.
It has been it's been a couple weeks. You were under the weather for a bit, and
I was under the weather, so we took 2 weeks off.
But now you're back?
I am very much back. I'm feeling a lot better in any case. And, this is not a Call Dr. Owen show where I tell you about my medical problems, which is the only kind of medical show I could possibly have anything to say on. So I think it's sufficient to say I had a thing. I went through a series of antibiotics. It was ear infection related, and I seem to be better now. So hopefully I will be here for the foreseeable future.
I like that, and I do hope the same. And also, I'm pondering a show, a call-in medical show called Helloin, where we call in and give you our medical, problems, and then you diagnose.
Yeah, so there are a number of things that I don't give advice on. Medical issues is one of them. My advice for your medical issue is see a doctor. Sometimes my advice is see a nurse practitioner, because I actually have a lot of luck with nurse practitioners. But beyond that, don't ask me.
Well, that's fair. That is fair. I want to check on audio levels for everybody. We have gone. We're as loud as we can get. Possibly. I mean, we could scream, but I don't know that works on the internet. Can you scream on the internet?
You can, but it's called caps lock.
You see. Well, we'll kick our voices into caps lock. But you were describing something. You were saying, we got that question about, do you have any dice rituals?
Yeah. And Nicole says you're plenty loud now. Yeah.
Thank you, Nicole.
So my dice mythology tends to fall in the category of things that aren't onerous for me, right? Like, I'm not superstitious, but if something doesn't actually take any extra time or money, then, why not go ahead and do it? So I've got a few traditions superstitions, whatever you want to call them. The first is that I tend, when my dice are resting, I tend to have them sitting on whatever result I want to see from them. So
Yeah.
if I've got my age system dice out, they're generally sitting there with all 6s on the face. And if they're not all 6s, because they might be tired, and I know dice don't get tired, then I'll pick any 2 to be doubles and have like 2 double 5s and a 2, just so they can get a break. The other thing is that I tend to have different dice for different game systems, because, you know, if I've got percentile dice for Call of Cthulhu, I want those to roll low. If I have percentile dice for wanting to figure out the critical hit on a critical hit chart in most systems, or Rollmaster, I want those dice to roll high. So I don't want to ask my dice to try and memorize multiple systems. I have enough trouble with multiple systems, and I have a brain and dice don't. And then finally, I mean, I've got a lovely dice tower that I was sent for my birthday, and it's got 2 dice trays in it, and I tend to use those. But regardless, I'm sufficiently clumsy that sometimes my dice don't stay on the table. In fact, I will sometimes throw a die, and it will hit the edge of my die tray, bounce over it, roll, and fall off the table. And if it does it once, fine, shame on me. But if dice continue to, in the same session, insist on rolling off the table, then those are quarantined, and they are put in a penalty box, and they get to think about what they have done.
So given your the depth and breadth of your history specific to running and playing in TTRPGs, can you think of a time, or do you have some people that you play with that have some particularly peculiar dice rituals?
So I think the most famous peculiar dice ritual, which I have to mention, was a friend of mine named Slate, who played Hero System Champions. And he had an incantation he would summon, 2 of them actually, for when he had to roll well. If it was a roll to see if he succeeded at something, sort of attack roll or a skill check, he would shake his hands and chant "Eeny, meeny, chili beanie." that was to get the good roll. Then for damage, he would shake them and tell them to roll like real men, but never on an attack roll, right? That was always chili beanie. So
I love some of the comments here. We've got, just real quick, I've got Charlotte. It says, dice may not have brains, but they have spite, or at least my dice do.
Yes. Yeah. All inanimate objects are ornery. So
absolutely. Yeah.
And there are,
go ahead.
There are various variants of eeny, meeny, chili beanie, other incantations that we use. Thanks to Knights of the Dinner Table having a series of comic strips about how dice are luckier if you rub them on a game designer. As a joke, I have friends of mine who will get up from the gaming table, walk over to where I am, rub dice on me, go back to where they are, sit down, and if the dice don't roll better, they blame me. I'm told I'm not working hard enough.
I see.
I don't have enough spare game designer mojo. Now,
yeah, you gotta.
A lot of the people I game with are also game designers, right? So theoretically, we could do half or more of the people at any given table. There's a decent chance that they legitimately qualify as game designers because they've got some professional publications. But because I'm the one that does it as my primary, I'm going to say career, which might be a generous word. I'm the one that I think that I'm balder, so it's easier to get right to the skin. Because obviously game designer hair doesn't have nearly as much mojo in it as rubbing it directly on the scalp, I'm guessing.
Speaking to how many sort of hairless game designers you may know.
Yeah. Well, yeah. A fair number, actually. So that is not uncommon. Well, I mean, we tear it out by hunks, especially if we read the comments.
Sure. Oh, yeah, right.
And as a result of all this, I have told my friends that when I die, I am going to be cremated, and I am going to have my ashes stirred into resin and have that resin used to print dice.
Oh.
And then auction them off. Some friends of mine will get a set for free, but the rest will be auctioned off to support my widow.
I love that idea. I don't love the idea, frankly, but I do like the notion. But given that you are so full of game dev magic, you'll be around for a bit.
Yeah, because as we all know, nothing bad happens to people in the game industry.
No, not at all. Especially given, we can afford all the health cares and all the things we need. Terry Advent says, for important roles, I implore the great pool of probabilities by making a V-shaped symbol above my head with my hands before rolling. Okay, I like it. I like it. Oh yeah, Jason Waltman says, but you're world famous game designer Owen KC Stephens and Archduke of Gaming.
For a long time, I also had a gaming tradition that I used different dice when I was GMing as opposed to when I was a player. But that came to a stop because some of my players felt that I had carefully picked meaner dice as a GM. So I tend to break it down per game system now instead of per roll. I also, for a while, had a little tiny yellow plastic D20 that I'd had since the 1980s, since the mid-1980s, which I called my small yellow die that never fails me, because anytime there was a crucial roll, I'd get it out, I'd roll it, and I would do well. But one day I was looking at it, and that thing was so worn that it might well be that it never failed me because it was not a well-balanced die. So it was retired into a place of honor, and I no longer use it in games.
I know that, this is related for sure, but I also can see how it may feel a little off the very specific ThursdAGE kind of thing that we're doing here, which is, fantasy age. But I like the idea of, I never really thought about it, but making dice, like you got to, you gotta make them. Like they got to be balanced. You got to pour them just right, and if they're a resin, or you've got to. I've seen I actually bought some 3D printed dice that looked so cool. They looked like they had they looked like they were made out of rose thorn brambles, and
I've seen those.
Super cool. But rolling them, they just kind of bounced all over the place and sort of shot off in different directions and didn't necessarily do the right thing for me. But I would be interested in kind of talking to a dice maker. Have you ever rolled with those metal die?
Oh yeah, I don't use metal dice anymore because we have wood tabletops.
Right, yeah, and they're just very sort of, obnoxious, honestly. They're just so loud, super, super loud. So how many dice do you think you have?
Oh, gosh. I'm probably in the 2 to 3 gallon range.
2 to 3 gallons. Okay. So basically you are talking about you would have 2 gallon jugs of dice.
More than 2 gallon jugs. I don't think as much as 3 gallon jugs.
Gotcha. Do you have any favorite dice makers or places where you go, or do you kind of just pick them up?
I am dice agnostic. It varies, right? Like Impact Miniatures has sets of dice that have every integer between 1, I think, and 20. So they've got an 11-sided die and a 13-sided die and a 15-sided die. And I love playing with different dice and different dice probabilities, right? So I picked up a bunch of those dice because no one else has unified sets that go up that high. I buy a lot of stuff from the Green Ronin web store because they've got things like, Dragon Age dice, which are cool looking, and it's not always easy to find dice. I like my dice to match. I realize it, again, statistically does not make a difference, and I didn't even mention this because I didn't even think about this as a superstition. This is just aesthetic. I like my dice to match. I like them to be complementary in color and size and style. What's a gallon? 3 liters.
Yeah, so if you're in Canada, I think all your milk comes in bags, and so
Yes.
take a bag of milk and then exchange the milk for dice, and then that's what you got.
Yeah. And since it's a vague measurement, so I'm saying 8 to 12 liters of dice. Anyway, the nice thing about some of the age system dice, especially the Dragon Age dice, is that you can have the 2 dice and the 1 die that looks different that you can use as the stunt die, because you have to have one in any age system that looks different. But they have specifically been designed with the same colors, just reversed, and the same icons and symbology on them. So I'm a big. I've got a bunch of age dice from Green Ronin, and I tend to get them.
Nice.
And I'm being taken to task for not knowing how much a liter is, which is fair.
I think I'm being taken to task for making fun of Canadian milk.
The metric system is only Ontario milk comes in bags, we're told. All right, okay, but we've got a Canadian on the Green Ronin team, so we came by this disinformation honestly.
Yeah, we're kind of Canadian now.
Yeah, Well, no, we're not. I'm not nearly polite enough to be Canadian, and I
Neither
don't
am
fear
I.
geese enough to be Canadian. So I'm a big fan of the Age dice sets, and I think they look good, right? And there's a visual element to me for a role-playing game. I personally tend to be very much the person that likes miniatures and terrains and maps. And Fantasy Age doesn't require that. I know there are people that don't like that and they prefer theater of the mind. I can do theater of the mind just fine. I enjoy it. But for me, there's something very satisfying about the visual of, okay, here's the party of adventurers, and here's a map, and which one? Our modern age developer Malcolm is and Quebec Milk is also in bags apparently.
Well, there we go. We're having a true false battle in the chat.
We are, yeah, we totally are, about Canadian milk, which is exactly what I expected today's.
Weirdly enough, it's like they saw our notes.
Yeah. All right, so I was right, roughly 4 liters to the gallon, if I'm being approximate. Good, fine. And someone has linked to the Blue Rose dice set. The Blue Rose dice set is so pretty. But it's also important to me because they're easy to read. I also have a set of dice that I picked up that I wish I remembered who made them. But they're like 20% bigger than most dice, and they have high contrast ink so that my aged old eyes can easily see what those numbers are. There are a lot of super cool dice where it's like, the numbers done in a calligraphy style, and there are 27 little dragons around it, and there are little dots on the side, and it comes in 4 tones of ink, and that's pretty, but when I roll it, my eyes will bleed before I know if I got a 4 or a 3 or a 6 or what.
Right.
So being easily read, and there's this fairly narrow line between being aesthetically pleasing and being easy to read. So Charlotte mentioned she can't wait for the Expanse dice to land. I'm very excited about the Expanse dice. I like having lots of different sets of Age dice. And obviously, just because they're Expanse dice doesn't mean I can't grab them and use them for Fantasy Age. Especially if I put a starship in Fantasy Age, which, I am perfectly happy to do.
Yeah, and you can do it. I mean, legally, right? It's not breaking any laws.
Yeah, there's a long, long tradition of sci-fi in fantasy role-playing games, going back to the 80s. Maybe the 70s, honestly. And there's a long tradition of pulp fantasy, including sci-fi elements. Fafhrd and the Grey Mouncer run into a German time traveler in a spacesuit. So I understand there are people who are coming from a more Tolkienian experience, perhaps, who want to keep things very clearly defined. This is my fantasy. This is my Renaissance. This is my sci-fi. I tend to be much more interested in throwing a whole bunch of stuff at the wall and seeing I don't care what sticks, just what is the pattern.
Interesting. I like the distinction, and I also think it's one of those things. One of the things that I have learned throughout this and of course our Mutants and Masterminds Monday is that at the end of the day, it's about fun, and it's about, in this case, you want the surprises to be, within the game world, you want to have that kind of fun, but have a discussion with the people you're playing with and, introduce some of that fun stuff. If you're playing with somebody who is just going to be a stickler about a particular, they want to be a purist, unless you're just messing with them, which, I get that. But, talk to them. You want to set the expectations to make sure nobody's fun is ruined and, they're enjoying themselves. A Klingon D6. Oh, my friend and mentor Jesse developed the Decipher RPG, which he gave me, and I love, but I don't know numbers in Klingon. Very, very true.
Well, I mean, as long as your DM doesn't know numbers in Klingon.
Oh, that's a good point. There you go, Shep.
Just make sure that you know to accuse them of being dishonorable for not trusting you in Klingon. That's the important phrase to have.
Which is something like kablak.
Yeah, I'm sure. So there are also ways that you can make clear what you are going to do with the setting. I was talking about sci-fi in Fantasy Age, and someone linked to Titan's Grave, which I think is a perfect example.
Yeah.
And Jason Walton's got a question, so we will get.
Yeah, we'll get to that, Jason, definitely. And also, just Owens, to let you know, I've got a couple things queued up when you want to do that. Give me that one secret sign that we made up.
The high sign.
Yeah.
Are you a great sidekick or what? Sorry, tick quote. so if, for example, you are doing a setting introductory document for players and you want to let them know that you may be sneaking some sci-fi in, but you don't necessarily want to have a great big conversation about it, one of the things you can do is just say, hey, here's the list of magic items. Here's a ring of invisibility. Here is a cloak of invisibility. I'm focused on invisibility for some reason. And here's a laser pistol or fire crossbow, which you describe it, and it's clearly a Klingon disruptor.
Right.
And you can say from the mountain of the strange lights. And you just put that in the document, and then you have presented that as part of the setting. And I just got art from Stan.
Oh, Stan! Wow.
Which obviously I am copying as we speak to put in our Slack so that you can share it with people, because that is hysterical.
Looking forward to that. I'm firing it up. But in the interim,
yes. Yeah. So that's where I like to have a tonal note at the beginning of a game and let people know what they're getting into, and then if you want to make changes or adjustments, whatever. David Brody just said your Fantasy Age game becomes Thundar. I'm a huge Thundar fan.
Me too.
That's no shock, really.
Me too.
So yeah. All that being said, we were actually going to get people into this a little easily. We were going to ease into it with some stuff that Troy has up his sleeve. But let's actually take a moment to talk about Jason's question.
Oh, let's real quick before we do that, and I'm happy to jump into that as well. But did you drop that out? Did you give that to me? Where did that go to?
That's our private.
I'm there.
No, it's not our private Slack. It's the Fantasy Age Slack. Hold on, I'll put it in the private Slack.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Did you find it?
I am looking now, and I'm sure I will. There we go. Thank you.
So Jason Waltman asked, I have a question about how to design a fantasy illness and disease in Age for Owen. Someone mentioned Lords of Light, Temple of the Frog. Yeah, you are my people, without a doubt. So when you're talking about anything like diseases or poisons or curses or any of that sort of lingering stuff that can occur in a game for Fantasy Age, one of the things that you are going to want to look at is what penalties does it apply to a character, and how do you resist it? And when I say how do you resist it, when you're looking at Fantasy Age, nearly everything is some sort of ability check, right? And those abilities all have focuses, and we have, basically speaking, a set number of focuses. And so you can build nearly anything by looking at, okay, what ability score and focus, and then what are the target numbers, what are the consequences? So for example, if you look at our ability scores, which I am working on doing, here we go. We have accuracy, communication, constitution, dexterity, fighting, intelligence, perception, strength, and willpower. And for those that want to follow along, I'm on page 9 of the basic rulebook. And each of those has a really short description of what they are. And so, for example, accuracy is your character's physical preciseness and skill with finesse and ranged weapons. Constitution is your character's fortitude and resistance to harm, whereas willpower encompasses mental toughness, discipline, and confidence. So if you are coming up with something that is going to be some sort of ailment, kind of regardless of what that ailment is, what you're talking about doing is creating something that people will attempt to resist. If it's a physical health issue, probably with Constitution. If it's spiritual or mental, probably with willpower. And then from those ability scores, you can look at the focuses. So turning the page once to page 10, you can see that Constitution has drinking, rowing, running, stamina, and swimming. You can quite reasonably say, okay, drinking is poison, and therefore I will use Constitution-focused drinking as the resistance for any poison, because alcohol is a poison. That's what we're talking about. And that's one of the things I'm looking at, maybe making a terminology change. That's one of the ways where we can adjust the game in the new rule book that we were just talking about that we're going to have out, the Fantasy Age core rule book. So that might be a place where we say, okay, instead of the drinking focus, we're going to have, the resistance focus. And then there's stamina. So these are the things that it seems most likely you would call on to resist something like a disease or an illness as the GM, right? You're just writing these things up in advance. And then that would be a test. And you just decide, how difficult do I want that test to be? And we have a whole set of notes on types of tests and difficulties of tests. I believe that'll be page 30. So there's basic test difficulty, routine, easy, average, challenging, hard, etc. So if you want to say, okay, this is an average flu, it's a disease, you can be exposed to it, you can get it, then you say, okay, if you're exposed to it, then you have to make a TN, test target number 11, constitution stamina check. And if you pass it, you don't end up with a disease. And if you fail it, you get it.
Real
And
quick,
then
Owen,
it's
I
just
just want to drop in here. Darius, boop,
Yeah.
boop to you as well.
You want to drop in what?
Darius, boop, boop to you as well.
Okay.
Darius is hanging out over on our YouTube channel and said boop, boop. So to you, we say boop, boop.
Okay, duly noted. Booping has occurred. And then you set up a penalty, right? And you look at the sorts of things, like when you're looking at the difficulties of tests, you can tell that the difference between one difficulty level and the other difficulty level tends to be about 2, right? The difference between the easy and average is 7 and 9, or 9 and 11. So if you say, okay, this is a disease that's going to make everything more difficult. Okay, this is the flu, and you tire more easily, and you ache, and your eyes are sore. When I have the flu, everything I do is more difficult. So you can just say, while you've got the flu, you are at -2 to all tests. You try anything, it's a -2 penalty. Everything is basically one step harder. You can also do things like say, okay, you are currently at a bigger penalty to some specific ability test. Maybe your constitution is depressed. You're at -2 to all tests, but -4 to constitution checks because your stamina is low. You can't swim as well. You can't row as well. All the stuff you would do is that much harder. And you just apply that same logic to any kind of disease or ailment you want, right? If it is a curse and you are cursed to be unlucky, you can just say, okay, you make a willpower check with an appropriate focus to resist the curse, and you're -2 to all tests. Or you could do something like you are cursed to take additional damage. So you could say, while you have this curse, everyone that targets you may replace one of their damage die with the stunt die of their attack roll if it's higher. So there's this chance that you'll take between 1 and 5 more points of damage, or you might not take any more. And then you decide what are the conditions under which the ailment can be removed. So, we have a healing test, and there are ways that people can attempt to make you healthier. So we can say, all right, every day you get to make a constitution test to see if you get rid of the flu. And if someone is looking after you, they can also make a test at the same number, and you take the better of the 2 results. And then if you succeed, it's over. Or if it's, something that you want to recover at in stages, okay, you're at -2. The first time you successfully make a test, you're down at -1. And then if you fail the test, especially if you make it an easy test, maybe you have a relapse and it goes back up. And you can just track it that way.
Interesting.
It doesn't have to be complicated. In fact, in many ways, it is best if it's not complicated. And you can use that same framework for any ailment you want.
So there's a couple great comments. One of them, this is a really great question from Stan, who just appears to be living to be a troublemaker for you, and I support that 100%. Stan says, what kind of stunts would be appropriate for a really great disease resistance check?
There are things you can do, right? Let us take that to when would you want really great disease resistance check. And basic checks don't always have stunts, and that's one of the things we're going to talk about in more detail in the core rulebook. But if you do want to have stunts, like let's say we're going to have a ring of disease resistance, right? And it might have stunts available to it. So they could vary from, okay, you can add your stunt die to your resistant roll, even if your check isn't a success. Or if you are a success, but you have a stunt point, for 1 stunt point, it can count as 2 successes. So again, if we were talking about a disease that had multiple levels of illness, you could say it's you've got 2 or 3 successes that it takes to be fully cured, then this could do that. You could even, if you wanted to, have, hey, if you succeed on a resistance check and you get a stunt point, you can be immune to that disease from now on. You've had the flu, and your character will never have the flu again.
I see. Rain brings up the Blue Rose fatigue system, which they happen to like quite a bit, which is great. And yeah, interesting. I keep thinking about, why would someone want to incorporate, disease or that kind of a thing into a game, just given, we get a lot of that on the daily basis. But there is also something to be said for, taking control or kind of being there and actually being able to combat it. I mean, we can combat it, of course, by wearing masks and getting vaccines. But, that is, it's so good. Stan, you and I are on the same team, and it's team try to flap this guy because he is unflappable. I tell you, Stan says, I knew Owen would find a useful answer to my ridiculous question. Try as we might, sir. Try as we might.
It's not that ridiculous a question is the thing. And as for why you'd want to do it, like right now, I am not currently running any disease-heavy plot lines in any of the games I am running because I'm getting plenty of that. But again, you can use those same rules for, if you're doing a game where the characters can be cursed if they do not bury their enemies with respect, right? Okay, we killed you, we had a disagreement, there was a war, but we must bury you with respect or we may be cursed. That ailment system can work the same way. You can also have things like, if you want to do a zombie Holocaust type setting, which, you can check out Last Citadel, which we have for a way to do that in a fantasy setting. It's a really cool setting. You could well have the classic, okay, I've been bitten by a zombie, am I going to turn plot line, which can drive how much do we want to press forward? Can we afford to take a day to rest? Can we afford to still have this person with us? Because if we're all asleep, you might become a zombie. You can build interesting storylines and drama with ailments without them having to be real-world disease equivalent pandemic type things. And that's one of the reasons why I like the flexibility of the Fantasy Age system. And the stunt system is where a GM can easily bring a lot of that flexibility into a game. And you don't have to have 6 levels of stunts, right? You can just say, if you're the GM and you're making stuff up, hey, if a zombie bites you, that's just a bite, unless the zombie bites you with stunt points. And then the number of stunt points of their bite sets the difficulty of the number to save against it, of the test number. So it might simply be, the test to not become a zombie is 7 plus whatever their stunt die roll was. Now the players can figure out, oh, there is a chance that we may become a zombie, but it's not every bite, and the number varies. So we can't just say, oh, we know it's 11. So if I roll an 11, I don't have to worry about burning any resources. There's nothing to worry about. And we also have rules, and again, that's something that we will make more clear and well laid out in the core rule book for doing advanced tests, where it's like, it's not yes, no, it's did I make progress? Does that progress move me towards a goal? And you can use that for simple things like research, but you can also use it for, hey, you have a curse or a disease, and it might well be that you've got competing roles, and if you fail 3 times, you're a zombie now. Whereas if you build up enough work over your threshold with enough good rolls, you're cured. And those are all ways that you can bring some drama and some storytelling into the game without having to introduce whole new sets of rules.
So in the case of zombie, catching a bad case of zombie, is there a way back for, if a character, if someone in the party gets zombified, are they just that? Is that what they are then from now on?
So that's going to depend a lot on how the GM has run up his zombies. I personally figure any game system that has rules to come back from being dead ought to have rules to come back from being undead. If dead isn't going to stop you, then something that's sort of like dead, but you're still shuffling around shouldn't either. The flip side of that is that exactly because death for many gamers stops being frightening because there are ways in so many games to come back from death, games sometimes try to instill additional dread by saying, hey, if you're dead, that's fine, we can fix that. But undead is such an unholy, unnatural thing that there's no way to fix it. Or for plot reasons, they're like, hey, we don't want you to be able to make Dracula human again. that would negate all of the pathos and drive of Dracula. So we're saying once you're a vampire, there is no cure. Even if I'm going that route, I hate saying that there is no cure for something, especially when it is such a lovely opportunity to have an adventure. Vampires can't be brought back to life. Oh, except by this one blood sword, which was buried with a lich who thought he'd destroyed vampires forever during a great war 200 years ago. And it's in his tomb. But because he had so much dangerous stuff, his tomb had all of these guards and fail-safes put into it. And we have now written a dungeon plot where we're saying this is specifically designed to not be easy to steal, and powerful magic users and sorcerers and warlocks on both sides of the aisle have put things in there to make it hard for to get to. But if you do, you can then cure them. That is another reason why I will sometimes do temporary fixes. If someone got killed, I don't want them to just be sitting around and saying, you can't play, right? That's no fun. You're already penalized that you lost, your character's dead. I don't want to say that until these characters have fixed you, you have nothing to do. Now, different groups and even different players handle that in different ways. I have had players that are perfectly happy for their character to be dead, and if they get raised later, that's great. And until then, they will play Bob the Guard, who gets hired on to help protect. And they're perfectly happy to do that, right? This is where, when you're talking about having conversations with people,
Right.
This is an important time to have conversations with people. But I am also perfectly happy to sort of do the movie DOA kind of thing, where you say, okay, you're dead. This alchemist, Miracle, not Max for legal reasons, can give you a potion to make you animate for a week. So we can temporarily once extend your life by a week, so you get to be part of the adventure to try and bring you back from the dead.
I like it. Hey, real quick, Larry Dixon on Facebook or on our YouTube says only mostly dead. Absolutely,
yes,
yeah,
precisely.
Yeah, I like this. I wanted to jump in here. Oh, Liz freaking Courts is here, and Liz says it's easy to say no as a GM. It's far more entertaining to say yes, but absolutely, that's what this whole thing's about. Unless you just really want, if someone who you're GMing for, they're just a pain, and you've just been looking forward to turning them into a zombie for their rest of their unliving days, I say go for that too. I mean, that's fun.
The question is, what do the people find fun, right? And
right.
That's where that conversation comes in, and that's important. Yeah, and just to note, I have gamed with Liz. Liz is a great, smart cookie and an artist, and she's got stock art up for sale, and I think she's taking commissions. So, by all means, look Liz up.
Yeah, I saw the Green Ronin account tweeted recently on our. We do that thing on Monday. That our little TTRPG side hustle, which I think is kind of a fun little thing here. Say no to sleeping apple giving witches. Agreed. Liz freaking Court says rock on. Fantastic. Do you want me to do we want to show off this? This is so good. It's a little macabre, I will say, just a tiny bit. But I'm presuming here. I'll transition over to that image. This is from Stan. Stan, I'm presuming that that's you, and that Owen. There we go. That's Owen is a D20, and sounds like damn it, Owen.
And that is Owen the D20 failing to be helpful during a game.
Yeah.
And I do not. Once I am dead and cremated and turned into dice, I do not guarantee I will be on your side, right? You're paying for the prestige of playing with little bits of my bones, not for any guarantee that we will do you a great deal of help.
Yeah.
Although,
no guarantee.
I will be in the afterlife giggling every time I get your character killed.
Can you make some way to kind of bridge the barrier? I mean, I know you'll be able to kind of mess with dice clearly, but Larry Dixon says, I've said damn it, Owen, many a time.
It's true, Larry has.
But yeah. So Charlotte says, love it. That's awesome. So Charlotte's on your list. Make sure you approach her, let her know kind of what she should pay. Should they prepay?
Well, I am sure if I catch a fatal disease, I'll have a Kickstarter. Other than that, no kidding, I am working on how to get the details of that worked out and in place in advance with things like living directives. It's not done yet. There are some weird legalities about what you can and cannot do with a human body. So I may have to have my corpse shipped to a different state after cremation
Oh,
so that we can turn it into dice.
interesting. So we have a someone over on our YouTube asking wants to be turned into dice after death. Yeah. So Thursday you get this kind of fun. This is you never know where we're gonna go, and yet here we are. So yeah, that's interesting. And I wonder, you know, I'm trying to think of the legalities. That is so you probably wouldn't want to like make food or a yeah, that's it is
Yeah, no,
macabre to think. Yeah,
there are some implications. There absolutely are.
they really are. They really are. But there you go, friends. You've heard it here first. We'll be doing pre-orders on the Green Ronin website. No, just kidding. So we have somebody by the name. I'm just going to call you Slit. I believe that's 518. How much would those dice cost? That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. Since I don't plan to die anytime soon,
Yeah.
I don't want to start giving answers now because, inflation. Um, Certainly part of the point would be for the sale of me as dice to be able to support my family and friends that survive after me. And wow, if ever there was a limited edition, dice made from my cremated ashes is pretty high up there. And folks, yes, I'm serious, but if I'm creeping anyone out, I'm sorry. It's just I've been rolling dice my entire life almost. I got into gaming right about 40 years ago at that role playing, and I was playing board games before that, which had a lot of dice bouncing. My mother used to tell stories how about before I would talk, I would role play by making little squeaky noises as my two fingers talk to each other. So this has been an important part of my life. I like the thought of continuing to roll dice after I am no longer here, and I feel like the best way to do that is to be dice. Don't take it too seriously. Don't worry about it. It's not an imminent plan. But I figure, the memorial service is for other people, but what we do with my bones, that's for me.
Sure. And our friend over on YouTube says, not creeped out, intrigued. I understand, kind of. And, so do I. I mean, it is, it is a spiritual place for you. It is a place of comfort, and it is a place that it is where you've lived for, the better part of your life. That is, that's understandable for sure. But what I find remarkable is that you're willing to come and hang out with all of these folks and do that for free. I mean, so that's kind of remarkable.
Nothing's for free, Troy.
That's true. That is true. So polterdice. Jason Walden says polterdice.
Okay,
I do like that.
That's genuinely funny.
That is. Yeah. So Nicole, our very own Nicole Lindros, says you can turn remains cremains into gemstones and jewelry. It seems like dice would be a beautiful tribute. By talking openly about this idea, we can all witness that you've clearly expressed your wishes. Nothing but love. Yeah, that's true. I really like that, and I do think it's important that. Oh, and I appreciate you taking the time to recognize. People might find that a little macabre and creepy, and some people might find it just weird. But I'm with Nicole. I find it really sweet, and I think it's one of those things. But again, that's not happening in the nearer future. So
No.
Let's not all sit there waiting by our phones for the.
I am going to great lengths to not have that happen anytime soon,
and that we're happy about. So Stan says. Mark Grunwald had his ashes mixed into a printing of Squadron Supreme. Okay.
Yeah, and Stephen Jones actually linked to an article about that up above.
Got you.
And Nicole's right? Talking about it publicly, and obviously I could change my mind. I reserve the right to do that. But
nope.
This has been my plan for 20 years now, so I do not think I am likely to change my mind on this one. Gaming is just such an important part of my life. There is almost no one in my life, that I don't know as a result of gaming, either directly or indirectly. There are a few people, like my mother and my sister, that I don't know because of gaming, because they were there when for my origin story. But I have gamed with them. Neither of them are big fans of it, but they've both done it once just to humor me and to try and understand what it is I do with my career. But my wife I met through gaming. My housemate currently I met through gaming. The vast majority of my friends, many of whom I've known for 20, 30, 35 years, I met through gaming. Gaming was the thing I did socially, and I am awkward socially. I know people sometimes watch these videos and they claim, I just don't believe that you're awkward socially, and that's because you don't see me curl up into a fetal position and cry due to stress afterwards. And that's okay. I am choosing to do this and I enjoy doing this, but I am awkward. And having this activity, this structured activity where I know what I'm supposed to be doing and how to do it, and we each get a turn talking, and we're working on an activity, and it's very, very it can be complex and ongoing and difficult, but ultimately if we mess it up, it doesn't destroy anything. That was how I learned to socialize, and I can socialize in other settings now because of what I learned by gaming.
Gotcha. Hey, real quick, just Dave G's. Actually, Slit is Dave G. You follow each other on Twitter, so you may.
Oh yes, yeah. Absolutely.
Let's see. Oh yes, of course. Jason is talking about Macabre. What costume that Korn dresses up in on Halloween? Macabre. Yeah.
That is my kind of humor.
Mine too. Mine too.
I know I have largely hijacked this whole episode, and you carefully asked me to let you know when it was time to do the other thing we had planned. And without telling people what that is so cool that I don't want to cram it in here at the end. So I think we'll just start with that next time.
Sounds good. Well, we won't let folks know, but I do have them queued up and ready to go for next time. But, Owen, this program is ThursdAGE with Owen KC Stephens. And so we go to where the Owen goes. And everybody enjoys the journey. I do want to say one thing too, that it reminds me that act of, imbuing yourself into the tools of the trade. It reminds me of just your personage, your personality in general. You you like to be a useful conduit to fun and a useful conduit to engagement, and so to me that definitely seems like a thing, I mean, that's it's just perfect. I think absolutely perfect. So go ahead.
The real question on whether it's Jason said my bad, not bad at all. This was a great conversation, and
gosh, yeah.
One of the reasons, Jason, that I wanted to go herring off on this, which came from answering your question, is I want to encourage people to ask questions. I very much want to know, what do people want to hear from? What are they having issues with? What would they like my input on? Stan Brown says you can't hijack your own show.
Right, Stan? Yeah, he can.
So, Jason, I want to thank you for asking. And that was a relevant, useful, important question that honestly I hadn't given a great deal of thought to before this. And I think it made for good streaming. So please don't apologize. I appreciate it. And I want to encourage people, if you've got questions for me or for this show or anything you'd like to see addressed on this show.
Okay, I've got something from a YouTube person.
Yeah.
Larry Dixon says, there's something we can do right now, Owen, which is have DNA infused ink made from your blood. Some authors use special pens as a way of authenticating their autographs, and we can put that into dice. Okay.
Yeah, we totally could. No, Larry's 100% right. And Larry is a master of a huge, long, complicated list of tasks. Larry is one of the people that I have sat at the feet of to learn from. So Larry Dixon is a big-time professional with a great deal more experience and skill and talent.
Well, I fell in love with Larry when he said, so using dice with your DNA in them is a perfect way to play with yourself.
Yeah, well, then that's yet another reason to love Larry.
I love it.
Larry. Totally.
What is a 52 for 52? Is that a thing?
Oh, yeah. It's not a Green Ronin thing, so I'll be super quick about it.
Yeah, of course.
52 and 52 is a subscription service for 52 products that I am doing through the Open Gaming Store. So you can go to opengamingstore.com and type in 52 in 52. The original plan was to do 52 products over 52 weeks, but the 52 weeks I picked were last year. So I didn't get through them all yet. But it's 52 different concepts, and each concept is presented in a PDF in 4 different versions, one each for first edition Pathfinder, second edition Pathfinder, Starfinder, and 5e D&D.
Gotcha.
So right now you can go get the 52 and 52, and you get all of the ones. We've done about half of them so far. And
Well,
so
it's a
if
healthy
you're like,
number, yeah.
yeah, it's like, here's one that talks about now I lay me down to sleep, prayers for common folk. That product, we send you 4 copies of, one each for all 4 systems.
Nice. Hey, Nicholas Morrow, always good to see you, my friend. Larry says, well, I do thank you much, Owen. It's pretty much the number one name I give when someone needs game work done. He's a treasure, a true treasure. That's why we built this whole program. This whole day, ThursdAGE, is devoted to you. So there you go.
And so the question was, how's 52 and 52 going on? It's still ongoing, and Stan says it's really 208 and 52, and it is. I intend to get them all out by the end of this year, but the people that bought in knowing that it was a subscription service. It's just gonna take longer than I'd hoped, but everyone will get everything in it,
and people understand that too. Most certainly. Okay, well, so whoa, what happened to the time?
The time was cremated and turned into dice.
We're on a roll, Owen. We're on a roll. So in the waning minutes of the program, because we were on time today. We rolled in, right? And we filled the entire hour with interesting, thought-provoking, alarming, arresting sort of things to pontificate.
Nicholas Morrow has a question at the last moment.
Wow, Nicholas, you do it every time, and I love it. Coming in real hot, but we're gonna let's tackle it. What do you think?
All right, how do you prevent fantasy genre burnout? So that's a great question. There are a couple of different ways you can have fantasy genre burnout. One of my favorite game masters, who's someone that I have known for 38 years, I think, maybe 39. He will run a fantasy game. He's running for Enforce right now, and he will run it every other week, right, for several hours for 6, 9, maybe 12 months. And then, after we've gotten through a big plot arc and some things are wrapped up and he's at a point where he feels like the characters are stable and well established, he'll say, okay, I need to take a break. And he doesn't mean he needs to take a break from running a game, which would be perfectly valid, and if he wanted it, we would happily give it to him. He's earned it. But instead, what he says is, I need to run something that isn't fantasy for a while so that my fantasy batteries will recharge. And so right now he's thinking about what he will switch to, which it'll still be some months before he does it. And we may run a game based on Tron Uprising because he is excited about that idea. Or he might run a superhero game. We're big Mutants and Masterminds fans. And I'm specifically saying that because this is a Green Ronin stream, whereas I'm not telling you what system we're going to use for Tron, because there isn't a licensed Tron RPG out there, I don't think. So he will specifically take something else, and we will all play that for a while. And then when he is done with that, when we have done some plot point, he will hop back to the fantasy game. And frequently we use that opportunity to have a passage of time. So it's a lot like the first frequency game is like the first season of a television show or the first book of a series. Okay, this may be weeks or months or even years, but this is one plot arc. Then we move to something else. Then he comes back and he may say, okay, 2 years have passed. And we're like, well, okay, our characters had wrapped up. We can think about what we've been doing over 2 years. But during that time, there have not been cultist beholder hordes coming down out of the highlands to attack us, so things have been normal.
Mm-hmm.
So that is one way to avoid fantasy genre burnout. Another question is to ask, what is it about the fantasy genre that is burning you out? Tron Uprising is great. Jason Waltman wished people would come up with stuff. Terry Advent saying that he alternates between Fantasy Age and Modern Age 1920 pulp games to avoid burnout. And that's another great example, right? The age that they're slightly different games, but they're very, very similar, and they've got different tropes. By the way, I would love to play in a 1920s Modern Age pulp game. I don't have time for any more games right now, but that is so much my bag. Anyway, so if there's something specific that you all are tired of, you might just look at taking that out or putting a twist on it, right? Like, if you're playing a specific fantasy game and there's something about that fantasy game that you all are getting tired of, you can either house rule that thing or you can switch to a different fantasy game, or you can sit down and have a frank conversation about, look, I know that we set up this campaign so that there are undead everywhere, but we're all tired of undead. Can we do something in this game so that we don't deal with undead for a while, even though the campaign is set up to have undead be common? I know a lot of people play games that are like, very, very focused in one little area, or have a great deal of complex politics, or there can be a whole series of elements with it that are just more than you want to deal with day after day after day after day. So that is another possibility. You also might just put your pencils and dice and online tabletops down for a bit, get together with the same group of people in whatever venue you do, and watch a movie and see if you just needed to take a break. My
have a fist fight.
Owen KC Stephens.com was about just taking a break occasionally.
Yeah, have a fist fight.
Yeah.
Why not? I mean, just, a couple good things here I wanted to make sure that we threw in here. Larry Dixon says, hearing the question, stifling laughter as he outlines his 47th fantasy novel. This answer pertains to my interest, Larry says. He says, Owen is good, Owen is wise.
To be fair, Larry, in addition to all those fantasy novels, you've done a fair amount of, elves with cars novels, which is urban fantasy and fantasy are a little different. But, you love Griffins and Dragons too much to not be doing fantasy novels. So you brought this on yourself.
I am wondering about, someone mentioned, Jason mentioned going LARPing. And I knew some folks back in my Pirates of the Burning Seas days when that they would get all geared up and do the boffing, I think they called it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's bopping or boffing or anyway. But they had their weapons and everything, and I was fascinated. I didn't necessarily want to. I'm laughing because Rain says, "Oh, and take some time, drink some water, ask yourself what's fun about the genre for you, or what you can do to catch that magic again." Troy, fight a person.
I mean, sometimes fighting a person is especially in a safe, controlled environment. Like right now, do it virtually. Yeah, I was part of the International Fantasy Gaming Society for many, many, many years, which was based on the Dream Park novels, and officially had permission to use that name. And it's still going strong now that I'm 50. I'm not out there doing it myself anymore. But we would take foam boffa weapons, out into the woods and basically play something that was clearly inspired by D&D. And it's a very different experience. One of the things that I learned was there's a reason armies have to teach you to march, because that behavior does not come naturally. We would set a marching order, but depending on whether or not you wanted to talk to someone about something that you forgot from the last encounter, or someone was asking you to help them with their backpack, or, hey, this is a really wide area, so instead of being in a straight line, suddenly we're doubling up. What order we were actually in was never anything but a rough approximation of our marching order. And that really impacted how I handle things in tabletop games. That, and we tend to think of woods as being, flat map grids with the occasional upright piece of cover, because that's how we draw them on a map.
Sure.
You go out into the woods, and there are areas where, yes, you can technically go through this at 5 feet per 10 minutes of hacking. So just experiencing it in a different way can be a great way to
getting that blood pumping and doing that. Yeah, it doesn't have to, maybe a fist fight. Hey, Mike Dodd, who jumped in over on YouTube. Hello, friend. I'm glad that you joined us. We are, we're nearing the end of the program, though. And always breaks my heart a little when we have a brand new friend that joins us and we've got to depart. But we do come every Thursday, 2 p.m. Pacific on YouTube, Facebook, and sometimes Twitch. And maybe sometime soon Twitch. Who knows? I don't even know. This has been a pretty phenomenal conversation. We have run the gamut, as is the way, as is our way here at ThursdAGE.
This is the way, yeah.
This is the way we do it. As we sort of wrap up here, do you... yes, we are, Nicholas. We are streaming on YouTube.
And previous episodes are archived there.
They are indeed, and then we are also doing that for our Monday, Mutants and Masterminds Monday, so when you get over there, you'll be able to see Crystal and Steve, and hear me. Twitch sometimes, Charlotte sometimes, not always. we're still working our level up there,
We
for
haven't
sure.
cracked the Twitch egg yet.
Yeah. The multi-streaming to Twitch and the audio and the what have yous. It's tough for tech neophytes like myself, but that's all on me, to be clear. Okay, well, so we've talked about a lot of stuff. We talked about running a disease in a game, and how that might play out, and how you might handle that. We talked about baking you into some dice. We talked about, what else did we talk about? We talked about how do you get over burnout, genre burnout, which is really, I mean, that really resonated with a lot of people cross-platform,
Yeah.
I'll have you know. Yeah, Owen, I feel like this is a pretty good program. I feel like we've stuffed it full of goodness.
I give you credit for at least half of that, Troy.
Oh, thank you. Well, I will accept at least half, but it's a joy to do this every Thursday, when circumstances and situations allow. It says, "Oh, thank you, Larry." Geez, I won't read that out loud. But Nicholas says, "Bacon dice." Okay, sure. Larry, thank you. Very kind of you to say. For everybody who is tuned in, we do come to you every Thursday, 2 p.m. Pacific, and we also do our Mutants and Masterminds Monday. I'm trying to think of some things. I know that we just released the Danger Zone Bridge. Danger Zone's Bridge is live at the store. $2.99 is all. At the Green Ronin store. We've got, of course, the Blue Rose Adventures Guide for so you can take your Blue Rose into your 5e. And let's see if I'm missing anything else. I feel like I kind of got it. Got the biggins.
Well, and if people want news from us, you can follow Green Ronin on Facebook and on Twitter, and we've got a newsletter, don't we?
We do have a newsletter. We send out every once in a while. We'll send out some discounts and some opportunities to kind of on things that are coming up. We do have some other things coming up that I bet you by the time we get here next Thursday, when we arrive at this time in this space, that we'll be able to provide some updates on pending beta tests and things that people have been looking forward to with a lot of energy and excitement. But yeah, as of now, I think we've done it. I think we can go home now.
So if someone wanted to sign up for the Green Ronin newsletter, how would they do that?
Oh, you know what? You can head over to Facebook and you can click on, I believe it says sign up for the Ronin Army. And there's a sign up there. Yeah, that should get you hooked up, and we'll send out discounts and that kind of stuff. And then let me see if I know that there's another way, but it's not immediately. Yeah, go to Facebook and click on that tab on our Facebook page. You will see it and be able to sign up and give us your information. And we don't do the spam thing. We send out things that we think people will enjoy to the people that we think will enjoy them. So, and that doesn't happen in any frequency enough to be called spam for sure. Cool. All right. Any parting words from you, my friend?
Don't base forms of government on watery tarts lobbing scimitars.
Wow. Okay. That's t-shirt worthy. I will be working on our merch store.
The Monty Python might have a word to say about that if we try and sell
Who?
that.
I'm far too young to know who that is.
Yeah, of course you are.
Far, far too young. All right, friends. Thank you so much for watching. This has been ThursdAGE with Owen KC Stephens. We will see you next Thursday. Bye.